Hi, we're back for another edition of Talk to Us Tuesday. This is our live 30-minute Facebook chat where you get to ask the questions. I'm excited to be here live at Brighton High School. Our new principal, Shelley Genero, has generously allowed us to be here at the library. And we're here with our superintendent, Dr. Chris Fidler. So welcome. Thank you for
Kristen.
joining
Yep.
us.
Happy to be here. Yep.
Well, why don't we start by you telling our audience a little bit about yourself and your role as superintendent.
Sure. This is my 7th year, believe it or not, as superintendent here in 27J, and it's my 14th year in the district. So I started at Timmick Elementary as a principal, and then was at Prairie View High for 4 years, and again in the superintendent's role here for the past 6, going on 7, and did a lot of years out on the Eastern Plains. I was in Lyman and Deer Trail for a number of years, and was also up in Blackhawk for a bit. So I've got a couple of sons in the district, 5th grader and then a senior, 5th grader Southeast and a senior at Prairie View. Have a son-in-law, or rather stepson and daughter-in-law that work for us in the district. They teach for us, and my wife is a principal over at Adams Swell, so education is kind of a important part of
Family affair.
our life, at home,
Great.
Yeah.
Well, great. Thank you for being here. If you have questions about the school district or questions specifically for Dr. Fidler, this is your chance to ask them. We'll try and get to as many as we can here on Facebook. If we don't get to you today, feel free to, or while we're live, feel free to leave your question and we'll get to you as soon as possible. So first question is, we hear you're stoked about the school year. Why does this particular word sum up your feelings about 2018-2019?
So context is everything, right? So we have for 3 years now with our principals and district level leaders chosen a one word. If people are probably familiar with that. So one word for the year, and in some cases, you choose a word. Last year I chose champion to be a champion for the district. I knew that we were going to be chasing a mill-levy override. Then of course when we failed that, really took on the 4-day transition and being champion for our kids. So sometimes you choose the word and sometimes the word chooses you. So as I was addressing our district leadership team back in July, and we all came back to work, principals and directors and what have you, I talked about how stoked I was for the new year, right? It's a very 80s word, totally stoked, right? And then someone slipped in my name on the, I pass out cards to have folks turn them in, and someone wrote my name and stoked, and it was actually Shelley Genero. So she's here having a good laugh because she's the one that actually wrote it down. I'm like, I didn't turn in a word. But I'm excited. I'm so excited. We ran what I thought was a really good campaign around the mill levy last fall. I'm as proud of that campaign as probably any of the ones that I've been a part of. Of course, we failed, but it was as close as we've been in 6 tries. And really, we were chasing talent and tools for our students. We wanted to be able to attract and retain the best educators and staff possible. We wanted elementary counselors as a part of that. We wanted one-to-web in terms of rolling out Chromebooks for all kids, and the new curriculum for middle and high school students. And in the absence of the mill levy, we found a different path for that, took on the 4-day as a way to attract and retain teachers, and then we really got serious about our budget priorities, and we're going to be able to deliver on several of the things that we chased around the mill levy. So I'm excited about elementary counselors in every elementary school. I'm excited about the one-to-web rollout with our Chromebooks. We purchased 7,000 new Chromebooks that we're distributing throughout the district to middle and high school students. Bought middle and high school curriculum, online curriculum for the first time in forever. So that's exciting for us, and then did put an elementary counselor in every elementary school. So we just feel like we're delivering on some things we were chasing last fall. Will Pierce, our chief academic officer, would tell you that we finally have the tools that we need to be successful for kids, and just being creative about solving our own problems and not having to go out to the voters to seek additional funds. And I think we've certainly covered what our financial situation is. I think maybe we'll talk about that later. But no, I'm excited. Really excited. Been a big news here locally, and then as you know, nationally, we've been picked up on the 4-day, which isn't unique.
Yeah.
I surprised national anchor man yesterday around we're the 100th school district in Colorado to do this, and that took him back a little bit. So
Yes.
It's unique. It's really unique to Brighton in 27J, but we're excited about it.
So let's talk about that, because as you said, School District 27J is getting a lot of attention in Colorado nationally about the 4-day school week. So talk to us a little bit about that and what you want to make sure people know about the 4-day school week.
Well, what I want folks to know, again, context is everything. So we, and it's old news, but I think people, it's worth repeating, I suppose. We're the lowest funded school district in the Denver metropolitan area, so we are 15th out of 15th in terms of student funding, primarily as a result of our lack of success in terms of mill levy overrides, and really took a different turn after we failed this last election, because when we did a poll afterwards, really people felt that taxes were too high. And you start taking a look at what we are currently paying for our school taxes in terms of general fund, bond redemption, and then our one loan mill levy override of about $750,000. Comparatively, we have a lot of bond debt, so we've been growing so quickly. We've been on the ballot. It's 17 times since 2000, whether a bond and a mill, or a bond or just a mill, and we've passed half of the bond elections, and so grateful for the voters in 2015 for passing that. Of course, we're in the process of upgrading all of our existing schools, and then opening new schools as well. So really wanted to take a different way to solve our problems. It's financially based. So people really like the money saving aspect of this. They think $1 million is a lot. It is, but not in our general fund budget of $160 million. That wasn't the sole driver, right? The sole driver was to go out and retain and attract quality adults to work with our kids. And we've had great luck with that. We hired over 175 new teachers. Michael Clow and his staff in HR do contract signings throughout the summer. I think they did 20 or 21 of them. Bring folks in, 10 to 12 at a time, kind of do their orientation, sign the contract, and I probably hit 75% of those. And I asked what they thought was maybe a trick question. So how many of you are excited about the 4-day? And the hands went up, right? So we hired teachers away from Cherry Creek, from St. Vrain, from Adams 12, from Mapleton, from DPS, and that just wasn't the case. You can kind of do the eye test in terms of, are they brand new 22-year-old fresh out of college, brand new first job, or are they veteran folks? And we really did a nice job of attracting some veterans. And then when you talk to them, what was the change? Well, I actually live in Brighton, but I've been driving to somewhere else, and just the change in the 4-day was enticing to them. So we're very excited about that. And I understand it's certainly an impact on our elementary parents and students. As we went out and did community meetings, that was kind of the largest worry. Being really candid, didn't want to do that, right? I just don't think that's our core function. But it was pretty obvious that families needed that, and we are offering that in all but 3 of our elementary schools. I dropped my son off yesterday morning. The district office is open on Mondays. Right. Dropped him off at CARE all day at Southeast, and there's a fee for it, but it's $30 a day, which is a pretty good fee. And if we were using before and after school care for Luke previously, and it was $20 a day. So really, if you're using the before and after school care, it's really only a $10 increase. And we have about 600 kids that are signed up, which is 11 or 12% of our elementary population. So most folks have found a different way to do that. So
okay. I know we have a lot of questions for the 4-day school week, but it looks like we have some questions coming in. Again, if you're joining us live, feel free to leave your question here, and we'll try and get to as many as we can. So the first question that's come in is from Joan Canis, which we're sitting in the library after Joan Canis.
Hi,
so
Joan.
Thank you for asking your question. She wants to know, what are you most proud of?
What I'm most proud of, and it's true every year, is our people, right? So, we have had the success that we've had because of the people we employ here in 27J that work with our kids. So I really feel they do more than most, if not all, of their colleagues around the Denver metro area. We've been lacking in tools. We've been lacking in really time for them to be pros for kids. One of the things that the 4-day creates is an additional hour a day, every day, of collaborative and individual planning time for our teachers. And whether it's teachers or bus drivers or our custodians, we're understaffed. I mean, really and truly, compared to our Denver metro neighbors, we do more with less and always have. So I'm very proud of that. I'm also proud of our efforts to, in spite of the failed mill levy, to deliver on the things we were chasing for kids. I mean, really and truly, with the exception of additional compensation for all of our staff, we're able to deliver on all the things that we were chasing in the mill levy last year for kids. So again, elementary counselors, the One-to-Web initiative, new curriculum at the middle and high school. The time issue of the 4-day was like a bonus. I mean, really, I think we're better off in this current scenario. We certainly would like additional funding, but we're further ahead today, I think, in terms of being pros for kids than had we passed the mill levy, because we'd have taken the $12 million, invested into what really was the current system, and continued doing business in a really similar way. And I'm not sure I'd be as stoked as I am right now about the opportunities that the 4-day creates for staff to be really pros for kids.
Yeah, that's interesting. We have another question from Amanda. Amanda would like to know how many new schools will be opening, what grades. Schools are quickly becoming overcrowded as Brighton is growing.
Yeah, great question. So again, the 2015 bond election, in that question, we had a new high school, which is now alive and well. Riverdale Ridge is open. Quist Middle School is also, they're open, but they're existing in the high school out there at Riverdale Ridge. We've actually have started moving dirt on the Quist Middle School site. We opened Reunion Elementary last fall down south in Commerce City. And the only additional new school that's left is Elementary 13, which will be out of Brighton Crossing, yet to be named, but we have that school site, and we're starting to do prep work out there as well. And as proud as I am of the new schools, and I really am, they're gorgeous. I'm equally proud as I sit here at Brighton High School. They got a total makeover 2 summers ago now. We reinvested in Brighton Heritage Academy there. The building's almost 100 years old. We did major renovations and expansions at Northeast and Overland Trail this summer, and their staff, want to thank them publicly, because I always talk about being a blessing and a curse. Mm-hmm. The blessing is you get a new building or a renovated building, and the curse is that's a lot of work to pack up and empty everything out of the building, to have them really go in and demo and start over. They had about 62 days to pull that off, and then get ready for kids again in the fall. So there's a lot to ask of them. But we have invested heavily in our historic buildings. Proud of the furniture refresh that we did for what I call the directional schools, so north, northeast, south, southeast. Then Pecan and Brighton High School, they got some new furniture as well. You and I were talking about the different types of seats available for kids. But no, I mean, I'm proud of a lot, but most proud of our people. We bit off a lot last year as a school district, and it would be remiss if I didn't thank our Board of Education. They're extremely supportive. And there was a lot to take on last year. And again, I'm stoked because I don't anticipate that type of a year in terms of having all that distraction.
Yeah.
But no, just proud of our people and how hard they work, and they come to work every day to be their very best they can for kids, as we chase being the district we'd be most proud of here in 27J.
So school only just started, so I know everyone's still adjusting to the new schedule and different hours. But how do you feel it's been going in the last week or two?
No, we were curious, and I would say honestly, Kristen, we had the normal kind of hiccups, bumps in the road. I mean, transportation is a challenge in that. Edie Dunbar and her staff do a fabulous job, but we, as of yesterday, are up over 1,200 kids. Wow. So 1,200 new students, right, from last year. Many of them ride the bus, so those routes are really changing daily, that first week and maybe the first 2 weeks of school. And we're transporting just about 5,000 kids, and we had maybe a half dozen calls where someone didn't get picked up or they were late. I mean, that's a challenge. So that comes to mind. And then everything is new in terms of, you've got kids going through the lunch line, they forgot what their code was. I mean, everything's just a little slower. Traffic is always a challenge. I know 120 in particular down there as you're going across east or west on 120th at Prairie View and Prairie View Middle. We had some road construction going on out there. The first day we only had 2 lanes each direction. We had a real mess out there, but I want to thank Brighton Police, Adams County, Terry Lucero, our Chief Operations Officer, making that better, more tolerable. But nothing out of the ordinary. Right. I mean, we always have that, and we're growing so quickly that it's just part of the growing pains, I think. Yeah. That answers your question.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
But nothing specific to 4-day. I mean, and I would say too, I'm sure that we lost families for whom that just wasn't going to work. Right. And I'm sorry that's the case. But again, given our growth,
makes sense.
Yeah.
Again, we're live. We're here at Brighton High School with School District 27J Superintendent Dr. Chris Fidler. If you have questions about 27J or any of the schools here in the district, please feel free to leave your question. We'll try and get to as many as we can. Looks like we have another question that's come in from Carolyn. And she asked, will there be some changes to the pension programs for teachers to bring them more in line with the public sector?
So there have been changes several times here in the last few years as para has tried to get themselves, I hate to use the word solvent, because they're honestly in better shape than many other public pensions. But if, for example, my stepson and his wife, who are just coming in as new teachers, have a much different path to retirement than those of us who are more vested in the program. Not to evade the question, but that's just, I will be subject to whatever those changes are. It's not something that I'm going to drive or be a part of changing. Yeah.
Another question from Cassandra. And I know you've gotten this question a lot, but why was Monday chosen as the day off rather than Friday?
So that's one that I arm wrestled with my team, my chief officers, quite a bit. And in the end, Monday, we just feel Monday's a day to prepare for kids, right? Friday feels like a day off.
Right.
I remember when Nelson Garcia came out and did one of the very first stories on the 4-day. We were talking about, he talked about Margarita Fridays, right? Well, that's the connotation that Fridays off has, I believe. We really want to position ourselves to use time in a unique way in 27J to be pros for kids. I mean, really to do the job right. It's a 60-hour-a-week job for teachers. I really believe that. And folks get to have a weekend with their family, and then they're not required to come in on Monday, but they're going to do the work, whether they're in the classroom or they're doing that from home because they have access to all the materials electronically via the internet. It's a day to prepare and be pros for kids. That's why Monday. I joke that we have the opportunity to make everyone mad on the 4-day, even folks that liked it, think it's a good idea. Oh man, Mondays, why not Friday? Fridays would be better for me. And it's just, but that's the why. We want Monday's a day to prepare and be pros for kids. Friday just feels like a day off.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense. You mentioned this a little earlier, but part of the goal is that you placed a counselor in every elementary school. Why is that important at the elementary level?
Well, it's important because we know that all kids, and including elementary students, really have a need for emotional and behavioral support, right? So we have a model in 27J that we've coined as managed autonomy. So we have in the past allowed principals at the elementary level to decide how they distribute and use their FTE, their funding for staff. And depending upon the size of the building, they have greater flexibility in terms of the enrollment, right? So those elementary schools that have 600 or 700, sometimes 800 students, have greater flexibility in how they're going to use their FTE because they have more allotted to them. And some of our smaller elementary schools would make a different choice around whether or not to have a counselor or an assistant principal or a dean. And we really felt that should be something that, the old language is above the line, that we're going to make sure that every elementary has a counselor. And we made that decision to do that. And again, found a way to do that in terms of our budget priorities, and we're really excited about that.
And talk to us a little bit about Chromebooks. You mentioned that and rolling out the Chromebooks for middle and high school students. So what does that look like?
So we had Chromebooks that were in the district, because I've had a couple of, my kid got an old Chromebook. So we had Chromebooks that were already in the district that we use for testing and things, right? I mean, many of them. And then we purchased 7,000 new ones. So every 6th grader through 12th grader will have a Chromebook that's issued to them. It's a $55 fee, which people have been a little bothered by that to some degree, but we also reduced many of the other class fees, especially at the high school level, to really, they're money ahead just paying for the Chromebook for that fee. And really it becomes this avenue for the digital curriculum that we just purchased. And we're excited about that. Other districts have done this for many years, right? So I think about Boulder Valley or St. Vrain. I mean, we're kind of late to the party in terms of providing this access for kids. We're excited about that, but they will use that. They'll get a different Chromebook. Each year they check them in, but they'll get a new one then again as a freshman, and then they'll travel with them their entire way. So we're excited about that.
Okay, and this, Cassandra asked, for departing seniors, will Chromebooks be reset to allow for full access as they go to college, rather than being locked to 27J protocols? That
is a fabulous question. I will have to ask Jeremy Heidi that question. My assumption is we'd free them up because they're going to travel with them, but I don't know that for sure. I'll have to get that answer for her.
So we'll get back to you on that question. Can students buy their own Chromebooks?
Well, so that the previous question alludes to that. So we set those Chromebooks for our needs, if you will, in terms of delivering the curriculum, and they're welcome to buy their own, but we're going to make them rent or pay the fee to have one that's issued by us. And that's how other districts have done it. This is beyond me in terms of technology, but they're set up to deliver the curriculum that we're purchasing. And I know that's been a common. Why can't we bring our own? Yeah, because we want to make sure everyone has access. And talking to Jeremy, we feel that's the way to go.
Okay. So we talked a little bit before about the growth of the school district, and we know that 1,200 new students this year. So how do you intend to keep up with the new development since schools have been crowded, are crowded? What's the plan?
Well, so if we hold, right, so we were as high as 1,300 on the rolls, if you will, and then we're starting to clean that up. We always see a little bit of a dip as other districts, because we were early this year, 12 started a little later. If that number at 1,200 holds in terms of new kids, that will be in the top 3 largest growth in terms of number of students that we've had in our history,
Wow.
right? And I believe that they're going to hold, and we'll be north of 1,000 kids when all is said and done in terms of new students, and that's going to put us somewhere between 19,000, 19,500, somewhere in there, really knocking on that door of 20,000. We've seen relief at Prairie View Middle with Quist opening. One of the surprises has been we've not seen necessarily the relief at Prairie View High School or even at Brighton High with Riverdale opening, but they only opened with 9th and 10th grades. So we think the relief will be a little greater next year and hopefully even better in that 3rd year when they're open, when they've got 9th through 12th graders. But the honest answer, and the board's aware of this, they were briefed on this last Tuesday night, is there'll be another bond election in our future. So when I talk about us solving our problems without a mill levy override, there's another reason to that. So we know that if we're going to keep up with growth and provide space for kids, it will require another bond election. And right now that we're looking at 2020, 2021, just kind of fleshing that out. Of course, the board makes that decision, but we know that we're going to need to build that 4th comprehensive high school at some point. We believe that we'll need 2 more middle schools, 2 more elementaries. Again, so we think we're going to be somewhere between 19,000 and 20,000 students this fall. And we know that our 2030 projections, which are now only 12 years away, we expect to be over 30,000 kids.
Wow.
And folks, take a drive.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter where you drive in the district, whether it's over in Thornton where they're growing like crazy. I drove down 96th Avenue out by Tower recently with Terry Lucero, and I hadn't been down that way for a long time, and I was just shocked. I mean, and we're booming. We've had great growth here in Core Brighton as well. It seems insane for me to say this, but we comparatively, we're still really affordable.
Yeah.
Right. So, homes in Brighton, Commerce City, and Thornton are somewhere in that. There's around $80,000 to $90,000 less than the median price in Denver. I mean, you can still buy a lot of home for less money than you would pay elsewhere. We're close to lots of things. Denver, the airport. You can run down and see a Rockies game in no time. You can run over to Boulder and see a Buff game. I mean, it's a great location. Adams County just I think they're officially named a spaceport.
Yes, yeah.
So it's a fun time, but
Yeah.
it creates challenges for us in terms of how we're going to deliver for kids and educate them and have space for them. But the direct answer to your question is that there's a bond in our future, and probably not just one.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah.
Great. We have a couple more minutes, and I know I have a question here. So if you don't get your question answered while we're live, don't worry, we will get back to you. Make sure we get all your questions answered. So I have another question. I heard that graduation requirements are changing to require students to have a certain score in their ACT, SAT. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Right, so the state changed graduation requirements, so it's more competency-based. So SAT, ACT scores are one measure of that competency. They can also take college courses and receive a passing grade there. The ASVAB can be a measure. There's a demonstration piece available to kids as well. But yeah, that's different for everybody. That was a statewide change, I believe, for the class of, looking at Shelley, this year's sophomores, and so sophomores are the first class that would have that. So they would be the class of 2021. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Now those are new and different. The state did that for us.
So speaking of the state, what are the most common misconceptions around school funding with the state and 27J or any school districts?
Gosh, that's a big one.
Let's start with this one for the 1,000th time. Marijuana is not the panacea for all of school finance's woes, right? So I like to say that was the greatest lie ever told.
Yeah.
So the schools, public education in Colorado does receive revenue from marijuana sales. It's between $40 and $50 million a year statewide. That goes into the Building Exceptional Schools Today grant, which is a best grant that is there's our bill, managed by the Colorado Department of Education. It's a matching grant. Brighton High School has actually received some best grants in the past. But you have to match the money, right? So what's funny is we had a project here, Brighton High, that we applied for. Before the bond passed, we applied for the best grant. We weren't sure we could match the funds, but at any rate, it's $40 million across the state roughly, and for example, Riverdale Ridge was an $89 million project. I mean, it just doesn't go very far,
Right.
and it's not for general fund. So then the other piece that's still in existence, was the negative factor for a number of years, and now they've renamed it the budget stabilization factor, which I chuckle at, because now it's the BS factor. But we are a decade into the state of Colorado having to balance their budget every year, and then at least doing that partially on the back of K-12 education by reducing the amount that is in their categoricals in their funding, or the funding formula. So I believe this year we are receiving about 12% less than we should, and that's true of everyone. They apply this percentage, so they run the School Finance Act, determine what districts should receive per pupil, and then they reduce it by what they can afford based on where the budget's at. And we actually did receive additional funding last year. I think it was $446 more per student, but it closed the gap. But it's like I say, we're still at 11-12% below what we should be getting, and I don't think that's ever coming back.
Yeah.
Initiative 93, we were remiss if I didn't mention this. Folks went out and got the necessary signatures to put Initiative 93, which I believe is going to be Amendment 72, which is a $1.6 billion ask of the voters for K-12 funding. And they've got a new Finance Act that they'll put that into, that the legislature put in place. It taxes the top 8%, so people need to be aware of that. So 92% of taxpayers in Colorado would not pay towards that, so it taxes corporations and the top 8% of wage earners based on their tax return. We certainly need the money. It's an interesting way to approach public ed, but if people read it and understand it, again, 8% of the folks will pay the way. So I think it's got a better chance than if everybody was paying.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we're about coming to a close, so if you still have questions, do feel free to leave them here on Facebook, and we'll be sure to get back to you. I just want to wrap up with one last question. On an especially tough day, what motivates you?
Wow, that's easy. So what motivates me, and I did this a lot last year, my boys, right? So whether it's my two sons that are students here in the district, or again my stepson and his wife that were teachers, my wife, and it's our business, right? And it's a higher calling. It's a great blessing and a privilege to serve as superintendent, and I take that charge very seriously. And I'm surrounded by fantastic people. I mean, it's hard. It's really hard to have a bad day, even when they're not as good as they could be.
Right.
I'm surrounded by a bunch of hard drivers. They want to be the best they can for kids. We want to be the district that our community can believe in most, regardless of what the challenges are. So my kids, the 18,000 students that we serve. Shelley knows this. I work out pretty regularly. I go hit the heavy bag and box, which it's great because the bags don't hit back. That's a good stress relief for me. But no, the motivation is my own kids, the kids here in the district, the people that I'm blessed to work with. This is our home. We love it here. We tend to be here a good long time. But like I said, I'm surrounded by people that make it hard to have a bad day for very long.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us again. This is our second time.
Yeah, it's fun.
We've had a pleasure of having you. And if you didn't get to leave your question, or you still have questions, feel free to leave them and we'll get back to you. And again, thank you and have a good
Thank you.
day.